I had lived for 35 years without ever imagining that a simple family dinner could shatter everything I believed about love, loyalty, and blood. It started like any other fall evening in Portland. The air outside the house was crisp, tinged with smoke from nearby chimneys. Through the frosted window panes of my parents' home, the soft flicker of candlelight danced across the dining table. The antique chandelier cast golden halos over each dish. Roasted vegetables, beef stew simmering in its own rich juices, a freshly baked loaf of sourdough steaming gently on the breadboard. It looked like a postcard of warmth and reunion. But what I didn't know then, as I stepped through that front door, was that everything had already been staged. The food, the smiles, the timing, all of it was a beautifully orchestrated trap. 2 weeks earlier, my mother had called me out of the blue. "Claire," she said, her voice dripping with an unfamiliar softness, "you should come home for dinner. It's been too long. The whole family will be there." The whole family. I hadn't heard those words in over a decade. At first, I hesitated. I was used to her conditional affection, the way she only ever called when something needed fixing. A roof leak, a tuition bill, a tax notice they'd ignored. Still, a small part of me clung to the idea that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. That they actually missed me, the daughter who had moved away, built a life in Seattle, and tried her best to maintain peace even from miles away. So I packed my overnight bag, left behind my back-to-back meetings, and drove 3 hours south to the city I used to call home. The front door opened before I could knock. My mother pulled me into a tight hug, perfumed and polished, smiling as if nothing had ever been broken between us. My father hovered behind her, nodding stiffly. The smell of stew wafted from the kitchen. I set my bag down, took off my coat, and followed her into the dining room where everything and everyone was already waiting. Ethan, my younger brother, was lounging at the head of the table like he owned the place, his hair still messy in that. I just woke up at noon, wearing a hoodie with some tech startup logo he probably didn't work for. Jasmine, our youngest sibling, sat beside him twirling a strand of her perfectly highlighted hair. Her nails were manicured. Her phone never left her hand. We exchanged shallow greetings. I smiled, trying to ignore the sense of unease curling in my stomach. Dinner began with clinking silverware and small talk about nothing. I picked at my stew, nodded along to Jasmine's monologue about an upcoming influencer retreat in Miami, and pretended not to notice the smirk playing on Ethan's lips every time he looked at me. Then, without warning, Ethan leaned back in his chair and said almost casually, "So, just to avoid any awkwardness later, Mom and Dad want you to know now. They finalized the will." I froze mid-bite. He glanced at Jasmine, who flashed a gleaming smile, then back at me. "The house, the Crater Lake cabin, everything. It's all going to us." I blinked. "What?" My mother set down her spoon and sighed like this was something I should have seen coming. "Claire, your father and I thought it was best to be transparent. We made the decision together." I turned to my father. He didn't speak. He didn't even look at me. Just kept his eyes on the glass of red wine in front of him. A hollow silence stretched across the table. The clink of Jasmine's spoon tapping porcelain was the only sound. Finally, Ethan broke it. "It's not personal. You're successful. You've got your own company, a house, investments. Jasmine and we need the support." A slow, sinking feeling crept over me. The room, once so warm, now felt like it had dropped 10 degrees. My stew turned to ash in my mouth. Jasmine gave a little shrug. "You'll be fine, Claire. You always are." I set my fork down. The dinner wasn't a reunion. It was a declaration, and I had walked straight into it. I stared at the three of them, each face more unreadable than the next. My mother looked down into her bowl as if the conversation had already moved past me. My father swirled his wine. Jasmine scrolled her phone like nothing important had just been said. And Ethan looked satisfied, as if this was a win he had been planning for months. I forced my voice to remain steady. So let me get this straight. Everything's going to you too, and I get, what? A pat on the back. Ethan chuckled under his breath. Don't be dramatic. No one said you get nothing. You get to keep what's yours. What's mine? I repeated, the heat rising to my face. Do you even know how many things you consider yours were actually mine? He shrugged, feigning innocence. You mean the time you paid the water bill? Come on. I leaned forward, my voice clipped and razor sharp. Try the 6 years of mortgage payments I covered when Dad's pension ran dry. The $40,000 I spent to renovate the Crater Lake cabin when the roof caved in. Or Jasmine's entire European design school phase, which, last I checked, ended in Ibiza with 0 degrees and maxed out credit cards. Jasmine finally looked up, rolling her eyes. Ugh, are you seriously keeping receipts, Claire? That's just sad. No, I said quietly. What's sad is how quickly you all forgot who was holding this family together. My mother lifted her head. Claire, that's not fair. You've always been obsessed with money. This family never asked you for anything. You offered. My jaw clenched, because you manipulated me into thinking I had to. Every time something went wrong, every time a bill arrived you couldn't pay, you called me. You didn't ask. You expected. Dad finally spoke, his voice low. You're successful, Claire. We thought you'd understand. That I'd understand being erased from your legacy? Jasmine sighed and sipped her wine. You have a company, a life. You'll be fine. Why do you even care about some house or an old cabin? I turned to her, stunned. Because that house was the only thing tying me back to this family. Because I paid for the roof that kept you warm. Because I thought I was investing in something real, in us. And now I find out you've all been planning this behind my back. My mother stiffened. Claire, you're overreacting. This is not some conspiracy. It's a practical decision. Practical, I repeated slowly. So cutting me out is just good strategy? It's not like that, my father murmured, but even he didn't sound convinced. I sat back, letting the silence settle. My chest was tight, my heart thudding against my ribs like a warning. I scanned their faces, not a single flicker of guilt, not a single ounce of gratitude. They didn't see me as family. They saw me as a resource that had run its course. You know what's really practical? I said finally, my voice ice, realizing when you've been used and deciding to stop it. Ethan scoffed. Oh, here we go. Claire the martyr. You want a trophy for paying a few bills. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The truth had already spoken for me. That night, something broke in me, not a scream, not a sob, but something quieter, deeper. It was the shattering of an illusion I'd carried for far too long. That if I gave enough, loved enough, sacrificed enough, they'd eventually see me. But they never had. They never would. I didn't wait for dessert. The moment I stood, the chair scraped sharply against the hardwood floor, a sound so jarring it made even Jasmine glance up from her phone. I gathered my purse slowly, deliberately, giving each second the weight it deserved. I've heard enough, I said, my voice cold, devoid of the emotion that had been bubbling under my skin. I'm done. My mother blinked, confused for half a second. What did you just say? I looked her dead in the eye. I said I'm done. With all of you. Ethan leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, smug. What? You're cutting off the family over a will. Grow up, Claire. I didn't even blink. Yes. And you'll understand exactly what that means very soon. I turned on my heel. My mother's voice snapped like a whip behind me. Claire, what the hell are you doing? You can't just walk out over a little disagreement. I stopped at the threshold, my hand resting on the doorknob, and turned to face her one last time. A little disagreement, I said, quietly, the words slicing through the room. This isn't a disagreement. This is betrayal. And then I walked out. The night air hit me like a slap, sharp and freezing. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just walked straight to my car, started the engine, and pulled out of that driveway like I would never return. Because I wouldn't. Not this time. The drive back to Seattle felt longer than usual. The highway was almost empty, but my thoughts weren't. I kept seeing their faces, my mother's hardened stare, my father's silence, Jasmine's smirk, Ethan's smug grin. And underneath it all, I felt something unraveling inside me. Not pain, not regret, just exhaustion. By the time I got home, it was nearly 1 a.m. I kicked off my shoes, dropped my bag on the couch, and went straight to the kitchen. I poured myself a glass of wine and opened my banking app. $1,500 every month, the mortgage on the Portland house. $600 utilities, maintenance, phone bills. Then the extras, holidays, emergencies, tuition, renovations. It added up. I scrolled through the auto-pay section like I was sifting through a museum of bad decisions. And then I started hitting cancel. One by one. Mortgage, cancel. Utilities, cancel. Jasmine's school fund, still open, still empty, cancel. Ethan's startup loan, cancel. Emergency account linked to their names, cancel. With every tap, it felt like I was cutting a cord that had been strangling me for years. And when the final confirmation popped up, successfully canceled, I exhaled. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. But for the first time in a long time, I felt light. The next morning, the phone started ringing. The screen lit up with the name I knew would appear first. Mom. I watched it buzz. I didn't answer. Second call. Third. Voicemail pinged. Then came a string of texts. MOM Claire. I can't believe you did this. MOM. Do you have any idea how much the house is struggling? MOM. Don't be so selfish. Family is supposed to help each other. MOM. Call me back. I put the phone down, sipped my coffee, and stared out the window. I figured she'd figured it out by now. That the money had stopped flowing. That the free ride was over. An hour later, another name appeared. Dad. I stared at the screen. For a second, something old in me stirred. That part of me who used to answer his calls no matter where I was, who still clung to some idealized version of a protective father. But I let it go to voicemail. Later, I played it. Dad. Claire. Sweetheart, you need to reconsider. Your mother's very upset. You can't just cut ties over a small misunderstanding. We're family. I laughed, short, sharp, bitter. Family? If I had really been family, why did I have to earn every ounce of their affection with my bank account? In the afternoon, Jasmine called. I declined. Seconds later, a barrage of texts lit up my screen. Jasmine. Absolutely pathetic, Claire. Jasmine. You're such a petty and selfish person. Jasmine. If you didn't want to help, you should have said so instead of pretending to be the good one. Jasmine. You've destroyed this family. Congratulations. I didn't reply, but I did laugh. A dry, humorless sound that didn't come from amusement. It came from disbelief. They really thought I was the one in the wrong. By the time Ethan's name flashed on my screen, I was ready. I stared at the phone as it rang, hand hovering above the screen. I almost didn't answer, but something in me, something old and sharp, wanted to hear what he had to say. I picked up. Ethan, I said flatly, what the hell do you think you're doing? His voice was already raised, hostile from the first breath. Taking back what's mine, I replied calm. You cut off support for Mom and Dad just because they didn't leave you anything? You're disgusting, Claire. Greedy. A leech. My fingers tightened around the phone. This isn't about inheritance, Ethan. This is about respect. Something none of you have ever shown me. He scoffed. Respect? You've always been the same. Controlling. Judgmental. Acting like you're better than everyone else. I am better, I said quietly, because I don't manipulate people for money. I don't pretend to be family while bleeding someone dry. You're a venomous snake, he snapped. You think you can walk away from this family without consequences? Just wait. He hung up. My heart thudded once in my chest hard. Not from fear. From clarity. I knew Ethan. I knew how he worked. He didn't bluff, and he didn't let things go quietly. So when I came home the next evening and saw my apartment door sealed shut with a hardened wall of gray-white foam, I wasn't surprised. I didn't panic. I didn't even curse. I just stood there, staring at the dried expansion foam that filled every crevice of the frame, hard as stone, like someone had tried to erase the entrance to my life. I pulled out my phone, opened the security camera app, and rewound the footage. There he was, gray hoodie, black jeans, baseball cap pulled low. But I knew that lazy gait, that posture, that smug little grin as he shook the can and sprayed foam into every crack of my doorframe, sealing it like a tomb. Ethan. Every movement he made was a taunt. Every second he stood there was a message. You're alone. You need us. Crawl back. But he didn't understand. I wasn't that woman anymore. I calmly saved the video, took 3 clear screenshots, and called the police. 30 minutes later, a young officer stood in front of my ruined door, notebook in hand, expression somewhere between disbelief and concern. "Do you want to file a formal complaint?" he asked. I gave him a tight smile. "Officer, I didn't call you here for a friendly chat." He nodded. "Name?" "Ethan Bennett." "Your brother?" "Not anymore." I gave him the footage, the timeline, and a printout of past texts Ethan had sent me, threatening, aggressive. The officer scribbled everything down, asked a few more questions, then handed me a case number. Before he left, he looked me in the eye and said, "You did the right thing." For the first time in days, I believed that. The next morning, my phone rang again. "Dad." I answered, already knowing how the conversation would go. "Claire," he began, tone gentle, almost pleading. "Does this really have to go this far?" I didn't say anything. "I know Ethan acted out," he continued, "but he didn't mean to harm you. He was just upset." "Upset?" I snapped. He sealed my door shut with industrial foam. What if I had an important meeting? What if I had a child or a pet inside? What if there had been an emergency? Silence. "Claire, please. Don't make this into a legal mess. We're family." I let out a short laugh. "You still don't get it, do you? He made this a legal mess. He thought he could intimidate me. He picked the wrong target." There was another pause. Then, reluctantly, "What do you want to drop the charges?" I didn't hesitate. $33,000. His breath caught. "What?" "That covers the cost of the door, legal fees if this drags out, and emotional damages." "I'd say that's generous." "That's extortion." I smiled into the receiver. "No, Dad. That's consequences. He doesn't have that kind of money." "Then you and Mom can help him out. You've been covering for him his whole life. One more time won't kill you." He went quiet for a long moment. Then he said, low and tight, "You're tearing this family apart." "No," I said softly. "This family tore itself apart a long time ago. I'm just done pretending to fix it." 3 days later, I woke up to a $33,000 deposit from my parents' joint account. No messages, no apologies, no explanations, just silence. And for once, that silence felt like victory. I had assumed that after wiring me the $33,000, they would finally leave me alone, that the silence meant surrender. I should have known better. Losing money was one thing. Losing control, that was something they couldn't tolerate. And when they realized they could no longer manipulate me with guilt or threats, they turned to something uglier: image. It started with the calls and messages from distant relatives I barely remembered. Aunt Diane, who hadn't invited me to her son's wedding. Uncle Martin, who once borrowed money and never paid it back. Cousins whose birthdays I didn't even know. They reached out one after another, each one parroting the same script, like rehearsed actors in a bad play. "Aunt Diane, Claire, I'm really disappointed in you. Your parents sacrificed everything for you." "Uncle Martin, don't let money poison your heart. Family is more important." "Cousin Tara, I heard your parents are about to lose their home. How could you do this to them? Each message made my jaw clench tighter. I knew exactly where this was coming from. My mother, always the master of dramatic narratives, had rewritten the story, cast herself as the grieving matriarch abandoned by her ungrateful, heartless daughter. In her version, I was the villain, the traitor, the one who turned her back when they were most vulnerable. It was all lies. They weren't losing their home. The mortgage was current because I had paid it for the last 6 years. They weren't struggling to survive. They were just struggling to adjust to a life without my wallet attached. But my mother wasn't trying to win me back. She was trying to destroy any sympathy I might have earned. She couldn't win against me with facts, so she weaponized shame. And for a moment, I almost let it slide. But then I looked at the messages again. The judgment, the false pity, the smug righteousness of people who didn't know a damn thing. And I realized something. I didn't need their love anymore. I needed the truth to be louder than their lies. So I opened my laptop, logged into Facebook, a place I rarely posted anything, and began to write. Not out of spite, not for revenge, but because for once in my life I was done being quiet. I tried to be a good daughter, but they never truly loved me. For over 10 years, I paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to support my parents, covering their mortgage, utilities, even my siblings' tuition and living expenses. I never asked for anything in return. When my parents finalized their will, they left everything, their home, their vacation cabin, every asset, to my siblings. Their reason? You have your own life. They need more help. When I protested, they called me selfish. When I stopped paying their bills, they called me a traitor. Now, they're spreading lies that I abandoned them, that they're on the verge of losing their home. None of it is true. I'm not sharing this for sympathy. I'm sharing this for anyone who's been used by their own family and made to feel guilty for setting boundaries. You do not have to keep suffering to prove your loyalty. Refusing to be used is not betrayal. And sometimes the people who share your blood are the ones who bleed you dry. I've walked away, and for the first time in my life I have no regrets. I hit post. I didn't expect what came next. Within an hour, the post had hundreds of shares. By the end of the day, it had gone viral. My inbox flooded. Some messages were filled with anger. Strangers calling me bitter, entitled, selfish. But many more were filled with solidarity. People who said they saw themselves in my story. People who whispered, "Thank you. I thought I was alone." 3 hours later, my mother called. I picked up calmly. "What the hell are you doing?" she snapped. I didn't raise my voice. Telling the truth. "You're destroying this family's reputation." "No," I said. "You did that the moment you turned me into the villain to protect your lies." She was silent for a beat. "You'll regret this." I smiled, slow and cold. "No, Mom, you will." And then for the last time I hung up. And this time I didn't feel broken. I felt free. 3 months passed. Not a single text. Not a single call. Not even a stray email from a relative trying to rebuild the bridge. After the Facebook post, I had blocked every number that mattered. And for the first time in over a decade, my world was silent, not in the lonely kind of way, but in the way a room feels after a storm finally passes. The space I used to fill with obligation and guilt now belonged to me. It was strange at first. The freedom, the absence of chaos. I didn't know what to do with it. For years, my identity had been tangled in everyone else's survival. If someone needed bailing out, I was there. If something broke, I fixed it. If they shouted, I softened. I didn't realize how much of myself I had abandoned in the process. Now, there was no one to manage but me. I signed up for a photography class I'd been eyeing for years, but never dared to commit to. I booked a solo trip to Paris, spent my mornings sipping espresso by the Seine, my afternoons wandering through old bookstores, my nights walking cobblestone streets, lit by soft gold street lamps. I spoke to strangers, took blurry, perfect photos, laughed for no reason. 6 months later, I stood at the edge of Machu Picchu, the wind tearing through the ancient ruins around me. My lungs burned from the altitude, but I'd never breathed so clearly. I was halfway around the world, and not a single part of me felt tethered to the past. I was no longer someone's savior, no longer someone's crutch. I was just me. I didn't seek out news of my family, but whispers have a way of finding you. Linda Bennett, my mother, had taken a job as a waitress in a small diner on the outskirts of Portland. A former coworker of hers ran into her one day and said she barely recognized the woman who used to wear diamonds and speak in commands. She looked tired, smaller, not physically but in presence. Robert, my father, was working part-time at a construction supply warehouse. No more Friday golf outings. No more long silences while sipping Merlot. Now he stood behind a counter, scanning items and pretending not to notice when customers recognized him. Ethan had bounced through 3 startups in 6 months. No investors, no funding. The same friends who used to enable him now kept their distance. He still wore the hoodie, but the swagger was gone. Jasmine tried to keep up her influencer persona, but without anyone footing the bill, her feed dried up. No more tropical vacations, no more boutique hauls, just filtered selfies in old clothes, reposted like they were new. They weren't just struggling, they were unraveling, and I didn't feel guilty. I had given them every chance. I had carried them for years. I had offered love, loyalty, sacrifice. They chose greed, entitlement, and betrayal. Their collapse wasn't karma. It wasn't revenge. It was the simple math of cause and effect. And me? I kept moving forward. A year after that dinner, the one that cracked everything open, I met Alex. I wasn't looking for love. Honestly, I didn't think I had space for it anymore. But he appeared quietly, like spring sunlight slipping through the blinds. No demands, no expectations, just patience. We met during a hiking trip with mutual friends. He carried the extra water bottle without asking, listened more than he talked. When I told him parts of my story, he didn't flinch. He didn't offer pity, just said, "You deserve better. I'm glad you got out." He didn't want anything from me but me. And for the first time, that was enough. One evening, I stood on the balcony of my Seattle apartment, a glass of wine in hand, city lights flickering below. The air was cool, crisp, the kind that reminded you you're alive. They had cut me out of the will, thinking it would break me. They thought they were punishing me, but they didn't realize it was the greatest gift they could have ever given me. Claire Bennett's story isn't just about being cut out of a will. It's about the moment someone wakes up and realizes they've been building a life around people who never planned to do the same for them. It's about the quiet strength it takes to walk away, not in anger, not in drama, but with clarity. The kind of clarity that comes after years of being manipulated, used, and guilt-tripped into believing that love must always be earned. For a long time, Claire believed that giving would eventually lead to belonging, that if she sacrificed enough, her family would see her value. But some people don't see love, they only see utility. And when that utility runs dry, so does their affection. Walking away wasn't easy. It never is. But sometimes, walking away isn't about turning your back on your family. It's about turning toward yourself for the very first time. Her story reminds us of something we all need to hear. You don't owe your life to people who treat your love like currency. You don't need to stay small to keep others comfortable. And you don't have to stay in the role they wrote for you just because you've been playing it for years. Claire was never greedy. She was generous. She was never cold. She was conditioned to survive. And in the end, she didn't need revenge in the way they expected. She didn't need to scream or fight or prove anything. She just needed to leave. And that was enough. What about you? Have you ever felt like Claire, like the one who gave everything and was still told it wasn't enough? Have you ever walked away and found freedom on the other side? Tell us in the comments. Your story matters, and you're not alone. And don't forget to follow this channel for more real, raw, and unforgettable revenge stories from people just like you. I knew something was wrong the moment I pulled into the driveway. The house looked still, too still, except for the faint, flickering glow coming from the backyard. Orange, rhythmic, alive. At first I thought it was someone else's porch light, but then I smelled it. Burning fabric. Smoke. Not the acrid stench of garbage, but something more expensive, synthetic, familiar. I dropped my purse on the kitchen floor and rushed out the back door, heart pounding, heels clicking against concrete. And that's when I saw her, my sister Lila, standing beside a flaming trash can in the middle of our patio, her phone held out at just the right angle to catch the firelight on her cheekbones. She was filming, laughing, feeding the flames one item at a time. Draped across a makeshift clothesline behind her were my dresses, my work dresses. Silk, satin, wool. They hung there like trophies, wilting in the heat. "Lila!" I screamed. My voice cracked. She turned her head, calm as moonlight, and smiled. "They're just things," she said, holding up my navy Ellie Saab dress, the one I wore to pitch our biggest pharmaceutical client last spring. "That's what you always say, right? That material things aren't important." Before I could answer, she dropped the dress into the fire. The flames hissed. The fabric curled like paper. I stood there frozen, watching years of careful saving, every late-night pitch and early morning meeting, reduced to ash. She moved to the next one, my deep red Zac Posen. My hand shot forward instinctively, but I was too far away and too late. "Lila, what are you doing?" I whispered. My voice wasn't mine anymore. It was thin, shaky. "Making a point," she said without looking at me. I scanned the yard in panic, searching for the hose. It wasn't where it should have been. I ran to the spigot and turned it. Nothing. No water. She'd removed the handle. My hand shook. "Lila, those dresses cost thousands of dollars, and I asked for $22,000, and you said no," she snapped, her voice now sharp, triumphant. "So now we're even." We weren't. Not even close. But I didn't have the words. Not yet. I just stood there, paralyzed, watching the smoke rise into the dark sky like a funeral pyre for something I hadn't realized was already dying. She picked up my Carolina Herrera blush silk gown, the one I bought secondhand but wore like it was runway couture. I had worn it the night I got promoted, my proudest moment. She dangled it over the flames. "That one," she said, almost to herself, "was always my favorite." And then she let it go. The fabric ignited like a secret. My past 3 years in corporate marketing, the late nights, the wins, the self-worth I'd built, gone. There were maybe 15 dresses in total. They weren't just clothes. They were proof that I had survived something, that I had made something of my life despite everything. And my sister was destroying them, one by one, like it was some twisted ritual. A sacrifice. But what was she sacrificing? Or maybe the better question was, what had I been sacrificing all these years? That's when I realized this didn't begin tonight. The flames might have started now, but the fire had been building for years. And I had fed it too. I didn't know it yet. But this wasn't just about dresses or money. This was about love, the kind that turns into obligation, and then resentment, and then finally, something dangerous. So if you're wondering how a sister could burn every symbol of her sibling's success and still feel justified, you need to hear what came before the fire. Because maybe the worst betrayals aren't sudden. Maybe they burn slow. 10 years earlier, on a rainy Sunday evening, I got the phone call that changed everything. Our parents were driving home from their anniversary dinner when a drunk driver ran a red light. The police said they died instantly. I was 18, in the middle of my first semester at university, still figuring out how to do laundry and balance student loans. Lila was only 10, at home with a babysitter, watching cartoons and waiting for Mom to bring her a slice of tiramisu. We were 2 girls, suddenly orphaned. There was life insurance, but not enough. Our parents' mortgage ate most of it, and what was left barely covered funeral expenses. The logical solution was to send Lila to live with our Aunt Teresa in Colorado, our father's older sister. She offered, even encouraged it, said she had the space and stability. But when I looked at Lila, small, silent, clinging to me in the church pew at the funeral, I couldn't do it. I was all she had left, and she was all I had. I made a decision that night. I told the state I would become her legal guardian. I dropped to part-time at university and picked up 2 jobs, waitressing during the day and bartending at night. I studied when I could, usually between 3 and 5 a.m., and napped in 30-minute bursts before getting Lila ready for school. It was chaos and grief and exhaustion layered over each other like sediment, but somehow we made it work. Lila was a sweet kid. She left notes in my textbooks that said, "You're my hero," and "Thanks for pancakes," and "I love you more than ice cream." I would find them crumpled between pages on the train to class, and they were the only reason I didn't drop out. We didn't have much, but I protected our little world fiercely. On birthdays, I baked from scratch. On Christmas, I strung popcorn garlands and made sure Lila had at least one wrapped gift to open. When she cried at night, missing Mom, I told her it was okay to miss and love someone at the same time. I meant it. It took me 6 years to finish a 4-year degree. But I walked across that graduation stage with my sister in the front row holding a handmade sign that read, "My sister rocks." She was beaming. That moment, it felt like everything I gave up had been worth it. For a while, it was good. I landed a job as a marketing assistant at a regional firm in Minneapolis. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. After 2 years, I was promoted. My salary tripled. I bought a small 2-bedroom townhouse in a safe neighborhood with good schools. Lila had her own room, her own space. I painted the walls pale blue because she said it felt like the sky. I thought I'd given her something solid. When she turned 16, I helped her get a used Honda Civic and taught her how to parallel park. I still remember how proud she looked. I thought we were close. I thought she understood what I had given up. But something started shifting around that time. Her friends had families with more money, bigger houses, summer homes. Lila began comparing. She stopped inviting people over, started asking why we couldn't just be normal. Normal meant luxury handbags and brand-name sneakers and weekend trips to Aspen. I tried to keep up where I could. I clipped coupons. I bought secondhand when possible. But she noticed. She always noticed. And no matter what I did, it was never enough. I thought maybe when she got into college, things would settle. She was smart, always had been. Got accepted into North Ridge University, a prestigious private school. She told everyone she had a scholarship. What she didn't know was that I'd taken on an extra freelance contract just to cover the rest. Her tuition, housing, meal plan, monthly allowance. All routed discreetly from my account to the university. I wanted her to have the college experience I never got. I told myself I'd tell her someday, when she graduated, when she matured, when she was ready to understand the weight of what it cost. But I kept pushing that day further and further away. And by then it was already too late. Lila's freshman year started with excitement. She posted photos of her dorm room, decorated in soft pastels and fairy lights, with captions like "New Chapter" and "Grateful for everything." I remember smiling at those first few posts, feeling quietly proud. It was working, I thought. She was getting the life I fought so hard to give her. But the tone shifted quickly. By October, her social media became a curated fantasy. There she was, sipping lattes at rooftop cafes, dressed in brands I couldn't afford on my own salary. She tagged boutiques I didn't recognize, geolocated herself at private clubs, and started referring to our townhouse as a family summer home, a place we'd never owned. Her birthday post that year read, "Thanks, Daddy, for the MacBook," even though it had taken me 3 months of side projects and skipped dinners to save up for it. I didn't say anything at first. I told myself it was harmless. Social media exaggeration. Everyone did it. But a part of me felt uneasy, like I was watching her drift towards something I couldn't follow. The next time she came home, winter break, she brought 3 massive suitcases. One was just shoes. I noticed a pair of Gucci loafers and a Prada crossbody bag, still with tags. "Lila," I asked carefully, "how can you afford all this?" She shrugged. "My friend Lexa's dad owns a boutique. I get everything it cost." It didn't add up, but I was working 60-hour weeks by then, trying to secure a new client that would help cover her rising tuition. Northridge had just increased their fees by 10%, and I was scrambling to make ends meet without showing it. So I let the comment slide. Then she started bringing friends home, girls from wealthy families who treated our home like a quirky Airbnb. I overheard one of them ask, "Wait, is this your childhood house or just like where you live now?" Lila laughed awkwardly, then mumbled something about us downsizing. They rifled through our kitchen cabinets, complained about the tap water, and left their designer coats draped across my dining chairs like they owned the place. But nothing compared to the moment I came home early one day and found them in my closet. Madison, one of the louder girls, was twirling in my Carolina Herrera silk wrap dress, giggling. Another posed in front of the mirror wearing my Max Mara black crepe blazer. My heart sank. "These are my sister's work clothes," Lila said offhandedly. "Most of it's outlet stuff, but she's got a few real pieces in here." They laughed. "Lila," I said from the doorway, my voice razor thin, "put everything back. Now." The girls froze. One of them muttered, "Sorry," as they scrambled to return the clothes, but Lila rolled her eyes. "We were just having fun. Chill. Those dresses aren't toys. They're mine. They're how I earn the money that pays for this house, your tuition, and a lot more than you realize." She snorted. "It's not like they're real designer. Madison's mom shops in Paris." The sting of that sentence took me a moment to absorb. "That's not the point," I said quietly. "You don't get to treat my things like props in your performance. You don't get to erase where we came from just because you want to impress your friends." "Well, maybe if you hadn't insisted on being my guardian," she snapped. I could have lived with Aunt Teresa and had a normal life. Her husband's a doctor. They have a pool. You stole that from me. That was the first time she said it out loud. That she blamed me for loving her too much to let her go. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just stood there, breath caught in my throat, realizing that for all my sacrifice, all my effort somewhere along the way, I'd lost her anyway. And still, I didn't stop. I didn't cut her off. I kept making tuition payments. I kept giving her $600 a month, quietly, without question, because I still believed she would come back to herself. I didn't know it yet, but the next time she asked me for money would be the last time. It was a Tuesday afternoon when it happened. One of those crisp spring days where the light feels just a little too sharp, like the world is trying to show you something you're not ready to see. I was in the middle of a Zoom pitch, presenting to a prospective client whose contract could bring in over $1 million. Everything was going smoothly until the office door creaked open without warning. Lila barged in. I gave her the universal "not now" hand signal, keeping my eyes on the screen while my voice remained calm. "And with that projected ROI, we believe your Q4 could outperform expectations." Lila stood just off camera, arms crossed, sighing loudly, glancing at her watch as if I was wasting her time. I wrapped the call as fast as I could and muted my mic. The moment the screen went dark, she jumped in. "I need $22,000 by Friday." I blinked. "Excuse me." "22 grand," she repeated, casually, as if she were asking for a ride. "I need to confirm my spot for the spring gala in Napa Valley. It's a picnic/networking weekend. All the big media names will be there." I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. "You're joking." She looked offended. "No. Why would I joke about this? It's important for my future." She opened her phone and pulled up a glossy invitation. White linen background, gold foil lettering. There were photos of sprawling vineyards, white tents, chandeliers strung between trees. "Look," she said, "the basic package is $5 grand, but I'm going VIP, it's $15,000. That includes the cabana, the chef menu, the press photographer, and the gift bags. And the other 7,000. Travel and wardrobe. Obviously, I need to helicopter in. Madison's dad already booked hers, and I can't show up in Zara. I was thinking Versace or maybe Stella McCartney. I just sat there, stunned. Lila, I don't have $22,000 lying around. Yes, you do, she said flatly. I know you have investments. You've been budgeting like a maniac for years. Sell something. Take a loan. It's not like you need 20 designer dresses to sit in Zoom meetings. My stomach turned. She had been calculating this, watching me, assessing, waiting for a moment to extract. Even if I had the money, I said slowly, I wouldn't give it to you for this. It's not just a party, she snapped. It's an opportunity. The Richardsons will be there. Taylor's dad is introducing me. Do you know what that could mean for me? Yes, I said. It means that you've confused status with substance. She narrowed her eyes. You've never supported my dreams. That's not true, I said, my voice suddenly shaking. I've spent the last decade building a life so you could have dreams. I gave up mine. I worked through nights, holidays, birthdays. I've paid your tuition, your rent, your food, your monthly allowance. She froze. I saw it register, but only for a second. You did that because you wanted to. Don't act like it was some noble sacrifice. I laughed, but there was no humor left in me. You think this is about nobility? No, it's about boundaries, and for the first time I'm setting one. So you're saying no. I'm saying absolutely not. There was a silence between us, a heavy, irreversible silence. You're going to regret this, she whispered, but I already did. 2 days later, I came home late from a client dinner. It was nearly midnight. My feet ached, my head was spinning with numbers and talking points, but the meeting had gone well. I felt proud, like maybe I was finally catching up to the life I'd postponed for so long. Then I smelled smoke. At first, I thought it was a neighbor's barbecue, but as I turned the corner to the backyard, my stomach dropped. There was an unnatural orange glow flickering across the brick patio. I rushed through the side gate, and there she was. Lila stood in front of a trash can fire, her phone lifted at just the right angle. Around her, flames danced high, too high. From a clothesline strung between two poles hung my dresses. Not just any dresses. My Ellie Saab, the Zac Posen, the blush Carolina Herrera. They swayed gently, as if waiting their turn. I froze. What are you doing? I choked out. She didn't flinch. Her eyes glittered with something unrecognizable. Making a point, she said, and let go of a cream ream acre sheath. The dress ignited instantly, folding in on itself as the fire devoured it. I lunged for the hose. The spigot had no handle. She'd planned this. Lila, I whispered, these dresses, they cost thousands, and you said I couldn't have 22, she snapped. So I figured I'd burn 20. Fair trade, right? Her logic was so warped, I couldn't even argue. I looked around for anything to douse the fire, a bucket, a blanket, but all I saw was smoke and ash in her face, lit by the blaze. I tried to grab the next dress, but it was already melting. Stop filming. Stop this. You're destroying everything. She backed away, camera still rolling. Don't touch me. I'm documenting this, so people can see the real you. I turned to her fully then, my voice shaking. The real me? The one who raised you since I was 18? The one who paid your tuition, fed you, housed you, gave you a life you now burn for content. Her lip curled. You always held it over me. Every meal, every dime. You made sure I knew I was a burden. I never said that, I whispered. You didn't have to, she spat. You acted like you were some hero. But all you ever did was make me feel small, dependent, like I owed you something for existing. My mouth opened, but nothing came out, because the truth was I had given everything, and I never once thought she'd see it as a chain. The fire crackled between us. 15 dresses lay ruined or destroyed. Some collapsed into ash, others blackened and shriveled like ghosts of who I used to be. I stepped back, suddenly cold despite the heat. "You need to leave," I said quietly. She blinked. "What?" "You need to pack your things and leave this house. Tonight. You're kicking me out." Her voice cracked. "You can't. I have nowhere to go." "That's not my problem anymore." "You don't mean that," she said, almost pleading now. "I do," I said. "You are an adult who just committed arson, who filmed it for fun. I could call the police. Instead, I'm giving you 1 hour to leave." She laughed shaky. "You're bluffing. You won't actually kick me out. You're too obsessed with playing the perfect sister." I looked her dead in the eye. "Try me." Something in my tone must have landed. She stepped back. "Fine," she said. "This place is a dump anyway. I'll go stay with Madison." "Good." I turned toward the house, but then I paused. Without looking back, I added, "Oh, and Lila? I've been paying your tuition. All of it. Your housing, your meal plan, your monthly allowance. Every dollar." There was a long silence behind me. "So you'll want to make other arrangements for next semester." When I closed the door behind me, I slid to the kitchen floor and stayed there. Everything smelled like smoke. My hands shook. Upstairs, drawers slammed. Then, finally, the front door clicked. Silence. And for the first time in 10 years, I didn't get up to check if she'd locked it. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I stayed curled up on the cold tile floor of the guest bathroom, wrapped in one of the old towels Lila never used. The house felt hollow. Not quiet hollow, like it had been emptied of something invisible but vital. The scent of burned silk clung to the air, stubborn and sour. I kept thinking, this is what grief smells like when it doesn't come with flowers. My phone buzzed every few minutes. Text after text from Lila. First furious, "You're dead to me." Then panicked, "Please answer. I have nowhere to go." Then manipulative, "If you ever loved me, you'll call me back." By morning, there were 27 missed calls and 43 texts. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I made coffee. Then I walked into my office, opened my laptop, and logged into the Northridge University payment portal. Her next tuition installment, $11,789, was due in 2 weeks. With one click, I canceled the scheduled transfer. Then I picked up the phone and called the university's financial aid office. "This is Isabel Hartman," I said. "I've been covering expenses for a student, Lila Hartman, for the past 3 years. Effective immediately, I will no longer be financially responsible for her education." The woman on the line paused. "I'll make a note in her file," she said gently. "She'll need to make alternative arrangements before the deadline." "When's the deadline?" "July 15th. 3 months. Enough time for Lila to face the reality she'd been hiding from, but not so long that she could pretend it wasn't coming. After I hung up, I called Maya. I didn't even say hello. Just, "Can I stay with you for a few days? I can't be here right now." "I'm already making up the guest room," she said. "Pack a bag. I'll come get you." Before leaving, I gathered every tuition receipt, meal plan invoice, and allowance transfer from the past 3 years. Nearly $120,000 in total. I printed them out, slid them into a manila envelope, and left it on the kitchen counter. On top, I placed a single note. "This is what I've been doing with my money instead of buying vacations or a bigger house. Your education was my priority. Now it needs to be yours." I didn't leave a key. I didn't leave a forwarding address. I just locked the door and walked out. At Maya's apartment, I collapsed on her couch with a mug of tea I never drank. She sat next to me while I told her everything, not just about the fire, but the years leading up to it, the passive-aggressive comments, the lies, the guilt I carried like a second spine. "I feel like I failed her," I whispered. "Like all those sacrifices meant nothing." "You didn't fail her," Maya said gently. "You just kept giving, even when it stopped being love and started being obligation. That's not failure. That's conditioning." I started therapy that week. My therapist, Dr. Alvarez, was sharp, warm, and unflinchingly honest. She listened to my story and then asked a question that pierced deeper than anything Lila had ever said. Do you believe someone can love too much? I nodded before I understood what she meant. You were in a codependent relationship, she explained. You overfunctioned, so she didn't have to. She underfunctioned because she knew you always would. That's not parenting. That's emotional enmeshment. The words stung, but they rang true. Over the next few sessions, we unpacked everything. My need to fix, to save, to prove I hadn't ruined her life by keeping her with me, and her need to test how far I'd bend before breaking. It wasn't abuse. It wasn't evil, but it was dysfunctional. And now, finally, it was ending. Meanwhile, Lila was learning her own lessons. I knew because Aunt Teresa called me a few days later. She reached out, she said, wanted to know if she could stay here until things settled down. I told her yes, but with conditions: rent, chores, and no drama. And she said she'd think about it. She sounded tired. So was I. But for the first time, I was also free. It took Lila 3 weeks to text me again. The message was short, without punctuation or decoration. Moving to Colorado. Aunt Teresa is helping me find a job. I don't expect you to care, but thought you should know. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I was angry, though I was, but because I wasn't sure what the right response looked like anymore. I didn't want to punish her, but I couldn't reward her either. So I sent 5 words. I wish you the best. That was it. No apology required. No apology offered. Just a crack in the silence, wide enough to breathe through. A week later, Teresa called. She's here, she said simply. Got a job at a coffee shop and part-time at a boutique. I'm charging her rent, making her do dishes. She hates it, but she's showing up. I didn't cry, but something inside me shifted, like the part of me that had been clenched for 10 years finally exhaled. With Lila gone, I started clearing the debris, literal and emotional. I sold the townhouse. I moved into a small condo on the other side of the city. No stairs, no memories, no singed bricks in the backyard. The few dresses that survived the fire were given away. I couldn't wear them anymore without remembering the smoke, the laughter, the betrayal. I bought new clothes, just a few pieces. Simple, elegant, chosen only for me. Work was better than ever. My boss called me into his office one afternoon, handed me a promotion letter, and said, "You've shown incredible grace under pressure. Whatever's going on at home, keep doing what you're doing." I laughed, genuinely, because for the first time there wasn't anything going on at home except peace. Then, one afternoon in October, I received something unexpected in the mail. A letter, real paper, Colorado postmark. The handwriting was Lila's. "Dear Isabel, I'm working 50 hours a week and paying my own rent. Aunt Teresa doesn't coddle me. It sucks, but maybe I need it. I saw the documents you left. I didn't know about the tuition or how much you gave up. I told people you were controlling, selfish, bitter. I told them you made me feel like a burden. But the truth is, I never gave you a chance to be anything else. I'm sorry for burning your dresses. I'm sorry for the things I said. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know I'm trying. I want to be better, not just for you, for me. Love, Lila." I folded the letter and put it in a drawer, not because I wanted to forget it, but because I wasn't ready to answer it. Instead, I brought it to therapy. Dr. Alvarez read it twice, then asked, "What would forgiveness look like for you?" "Not forgetting," I said. "Not pretending it didn't happen. But maybe building something new. From scratch. On equal footing." I nodded. As sisters, not as savior and rescued. The next week I wrote back, "Dear Lila, thank you for your letter. It meant more than I expected it to. I'm not ready to go back to how things were, and maybe that's a good thing. But I am open to starting something new. A relationship between 2 women who know what it means to lose each other and still choose to try again. I believe in your education. I always have. So here's what I propose. For every dollar you save toward community college, I'll match it. Up to $5,000 per year. This isn't charity. It's partnership. But only if you maintain your grades. This is your life now, Lila. I'm not carrying it anymore. But I'm willing to walk beside you if you carry your share. Love, Isabel, she replied 2 days later. I've saved $1,200 already. Starting classes in January. I'll send you the receipt. Also, I got promoted to shift manager. It's not much, but it's mine. Thank you for not giving up on me completely. We've spoken every week since then. Carefully, slowly, sometimes awkward, but honest. Last month, she visited me in Minneapolis. She handed me a small box. Inside was a necklace. 2 interlocking silver circles. It's not expensive, she said, but the woman at the shop said it means being connected without being tangled. I wear it often, because sometimes from the ashes of what's broken, something stronger can begin.